everybody. My name is Dan Freiling, and today I'll be giving a speech about the effects of drug use and drug addiction. So getting into this, we're going to start off with statistics. So 1 to 3 of every adult deal with substance abuse or have been negatively impacted by substance abuses. So what this means is either them themselves have dealt with substance abuse, or they have a direct family member or friend that has also dealt with these abuse. Close to 100,000 overdoses a year cause deaths in just the United States alone. And this is not counting the people who overdose but are revived by either Narcan and paramedics. It's possible for people to overdose close to 5 to 6 times in their lifetime with severe drug usage. According to a study by the CPYU, 23.6% of 12th grade students have reported to deal with substance abuse or have seen the negative effects. 16.5% of 10th graders and 8.1% of 8th graders, which is 13 to 14 years old, have dealt with substance abuses. And 70% increase in drug problems has occurred in the last 8 years, and it's only going to get worse with these new drugs such as fentanyl and all these new overdoses. And this is sourced by Summit Research. So now we are going to move on to impacts of the body. According to the Gateway Foundation, different drugs of course are going to have different effects, but heroin, cocaine, methamphetamines, and opioids relatively have the same effects, such as weight loss, nutritional disorders such as eating disorders, dependency. Your body is so hooked on these drugs that you physically cannot get away from it, and it's overall just taking you over. And physical changes, as seen in this picture right here, you can tell the malnourishment to the sinking in the cheeks and the lips, discoloration, and overall having an older appearance. And you're completely losing all your personal hygiene because you're so addicted to these, so people just stop caring about themselves. And another big phenomenon for this is people's teeth will start to fall out because they're not brushing and all these drugs are taking this over. So that will cause further eating disorders because it's painful to eat, and the only ways to reverse this is with professional medical care. So now let's move on to the impacts of mental health and the brain. So drugs can cause your whole brain system to rewire itself, causing depression, anxiety, PTSDs, bipolar disorders, schizophrenia, disruptive disorders, neurological development orders. Drugs overall just absolutely kill your brain and destroy it and rewire it. And this is especially prominent in young teenagers who are hooked on these drugs. This will cause, as you grow older and you're still addicted to these drugs, because your brain's not fully developed until you're about age 25 to about 26 years old. So young teens are relatively to have more negative effects than if you start older in your life. And overall, just completely killing your brain off. So why does addiction occur? So addiction is defined as, and occurs, when the pleasure circuits in your brain get overwhelmed. So this is really, really common when people are trying to take their first drugs. Either they are peer pressured, or they're just with a group of friends and they want to have a good time, or any other factors like that. So they try to chase this high, as many of you have probably heard. Getting this first feeling that they have is described by most addicts as the best high they've ever had in their entire life when they first start. And what people will live their life doing is try to get to these highs and re-achieve that high and get that same feeling. So what a lot of people will do is they'll try to take either more drugs or stronger of more drugs to recreate this feeling. But this overall will cause more overdoses, unfortunately, because of this. And a lot of addiction can happen due to traumas, stresses, and depression and anxiety. So a lot of what will happen is people don't like themselves when they are off of drugs because they're so depressed and they have all this trauma. So people take drugs because they don't like how they currently are in life. So they take these drugs to become a different person, so to speak. And then they fear that other people won't like you when you're off of these drugs because you're so depressed and they don't think you'll like it. So people are less likely actually to reach out for help because of this. And another occurrence is your genetics. Genetics has a lot to play with addiction. Some people will get more hooked than others will. And this is also with people who are recovering addicts are 70% more likely to get back onto drugs than someone else who can never take drugs their entire life. So that just goes to show of how much drugs can rewire your brain. All right, so why does all of this matter? Ultimately, this is a matter of life and death for many people, unfortunately. And millions of people are affected worldwide because of this. And I know, including me, having seen the negative effects of drugs, and probably many people in this room have seen those negative effects of drugs, either with family members or close friends of theirs. Some people, unfortunately, also do want to quit these drugs, but they don't know how to reach out for help, and they don't know how to get the help that they need. Either they don't have the friends or the courage to ask, to say, hey, I have a problem and I need help. So let's go over some of the solutions to help with drug use. More health lines and contacts, such as people, critical health lines, being able to call to ask if you need assistance with a drug problem. And more drug awareness. A few weeks ago, we did have our own seminar about drug use and drug addiction. We went over a lot of drugs like fentanyl and a bunch of these other drugs and how addicting they can be, and really motivating students, especially at a teenage age, where it can just will only get worse from there, to not do these drugs and really avoid them. Stricter rules and regulations for drugs. So I'm assuming many people have heard of people who will abuse the pharmaceutical system. So what that means is people will get prescribed drugs, and this is really common in opioids and painkillers such as oxycodone and hydrocodone. So what this happens is they don't like the pain that they're feeling and they don't want to keep this pain, so they'll claim, or they usually get really hooked on these because of the feeling they get. So they'll really get hooked onto these drugs. So what they will try to do is they will contact different doctors to try to get them prescribed more pain medications, and usually sometimes they'll hide these pain medications to have no proof that they even got them, or it was a case of they falsely got them and someone else picked them up. So try to look that they're not the bad guy and other people are. So in conclusion, I've gone over multiple points: the statistics, the impacts on the body, and the impacts on the brain, why addiction occurs, why this matters, and some solutions. It's our job to help others with addiction. Many people won't reach out with themselves, and rumors say that it only takes 21 days to start an addiction or a new habit, but in reality, it starts as soon as you start. All right, are there any questions?
What are the street names for some of those drugs?
A lot of street names for these drugs, so such as like fentanyl and stuff.
Yeah.
Well, to be appropriate, there's a lot of other names. So there's weed, that's also another thing for pot, and a bunch of these other names. And there's a huge list of them too. I don't have a list in front of me, but I would encourage you to research that. Are there any other questions? No? Thank you so much for listening. I really appreciate it. Thank you all.